Aaron Rodgers made news going back to last Thursday and Friday. We talked about his ayahuasca therapy or ayahuasca session. And he seems to be doing the rounds now as allowing other people in. He interviewed with Peter King of the MMQB. Quote, I love myself a lot better, so it's easier to love other people. Give them forgiveness, not jump on somebody's ass if they make a mistake. The key was the ayahuasca, he said. I think it unlocked a lot in my heart. Rodgers said, quote, being able to fully give my heart to my teammates, my loved ones, relationships, I can embrace unconditionally myself. I just didn't do that for a long time. I was very self-critical. When you have so much judgment of yourself, it's easy to transfer that judgment to other people. When you figure out a better way to love yourself, I think you can love people better because you're not casting the same judgment you cast in yourself or on other people. I'm really thankful for that. It's like a really profound way of looking at things. Like, I was a little bit bothered by, I'll just be honest, like, Cowherd going back to last Friday. Jason, you tell me if I'm wrong. I think like they did 3 segments, like making fun of Aaron Rodgers for coming out and saying he actually doing ayahuasca treatment. Ayahuasca, for people who don't know, it's there's an element to it. It's a hallucinogenic drug, but it's an entire like therapy session that can last upwards of 3 days. There's an episode of the TV show Billions. I don't know if you guys, I love Billions. I'm a huge Billions fan. Where they do it in some hut in Canada or whatever. You have a shaman, but a lot of it is about kind of clarity on yourself and cleansing yourself of whatever. I told you guys Friday about my meeting with a shaman and my own, how I beat up on myself, my own self-doubt, self-loathing, all those other things that you try and you got to kind of like rid yourself because everybody's going through stuff, but how you, in Aaron Rodgers' words, you end up loving yourself, appreciating the people around you. Like I'm reading this to go like, man, that's a big step in humanity. But what happens is when it's unconventional, like when you hear hallucinogenic drugs, it's very normal for everybody to go like, oh, he's like some hippie smoking peyote, rolling around in a V-dub every day going, yeah, man, I love you, man. Like that's not really what it's about. But again, the way it's portrayed, we think of like 70s dropping acid at a Grateful. It's not like he went to follow the Grateful Dead around for summer, dropped a bunch of acid, right? Dating a woman with armpit hair and just be like, man, I just love everybody, man. That's not what this is about. This is finding yourself, right? A mission of self-discovery. And you're going to change too, like who you are in your teens is now you're in your 20s, and you're in your 20s, now you're 30s. Right. And he's a guy who's gone through relationship changes, relationship with his family. Right. He's dealing with how he's perceived nationally, locally, but maybe most importantly, inside that locker room. And the guys he's with that locker room and he walks in. He's Aaron effing Rodgers. They've grown up watching him sling it for the Green Bay Packers. They already have a perception of who he is and what he's about that he has to decide, like, do I meet that head on? Do I work through it? How do I do it? Here's Aaron Rodgers, and I thought this was great. The Pardon My Take guys sat down with him on a podcast, and he had this exchange.
People say, oh, well, immunization, vaccination.
Yeah, I did. I said that a lot.
Yeah, you did.
Yep.
But
how many people do you think you killed? What's your count?
How many grandmothers? Let's just do grandmothers.
I mean, I know you guys I don't find that part funny. I really don't.
Here's Rodgers when he was talking with Big Cat.
Is it hard for you as a Bears fan that some of your greatest moments are cheering against me when the Bears aren't playing?
Every year I look forward to the playoffs and the game that you're going to lose. And I've told this story on the air, but like when you guys lost to San Francisco this year, we were watching the game in New Jersey, and I drove back to Brooklyn, brag, and I listened to Tauscher, ESPN Wisconsin. For 3 hours I sat in my car. I had arrived home. It's a 20-minute drive. I had ride home. I sat for 3 hours listening to callers be like, blow up Lambeau, get 12 out of here. We need to build a dome. This team isn't built for the outside. So, yes, watching you lose in the playoffs that's my Super Bowl. And I've won a lot of Super Bowls, if you do it that way, more than you.
You know, it's actually possible that the guy's in a really good place. And if ayahuasca treatment is the reason he's in a good place and the reason he's a better teammate and the reason he's a better friend, like, kind of more power to him. Find whatever your own path to happiness is. And as long as it doesn't affect somebody else's, I don't really understand the critique of how he's come to this place, right? If we're totally honest, and I think Aaron Rodgers has been mostly honest with us in this offseason. Obviously, the vaccine thing was divisive, and I think a big reason was he wasn't honest about it. But if we're totally honest about Rodgers and his play and how he's handled himself, the last 2 years have been spectacular. After 3 years ago, and this is the season before his first ayahuasca therapy, he didn't seem like he was great at accepting that style of coaching, didn't seem like he was good with the organization, and didn't seem like he was happy with everybody around him, which, as he's led us to believe, which is very possible and very likely, he wasn't happy with himself, right? And if this is what's allowed him to be better, like, I don't really get the clowning of it. Is that a fair way to look at it, Jay? Go ahead, Ramos. You had a question.
No, I agree with you, and you guys brought up a good point. Both you and Dan did. I believe it was Friday at the Chargers camp where you said something about you like their chances this year, and Dan says I like them too, and that's the first time I've heard in a while people say like they really, because there's always been problems with the Packers, right? Their defense wasn't good enough. They had a running game. It was all Aaron Rodgers. They lost Devontae Adams, but now like you just said, maybe he's in a different place. Maybe he's in a place that's really good. And now you're feeling like maybe the Packers actually have a good team around him and they're actually going to be really good.
Well, I think they've had a good team around him. I think the team is in totality is very, very good. But I think the thing that gives you the most hope is that Aaron Rodgers allows us in to show us he's a human being. Right? But by telling us that he didn't love himself, who can't relate to that? Who can't relate to self-doubt and self-loathing? Like that's, right? Here's a guy who, anytime Colin talks about it, and I do think there's a level of truth to it that Aaron Rodgers is incredibly bright. And one of the things with people who are super, super intelligent, when you get to above 140 as your IQ, is that you are, in fact, the smartest person in the room, but you have to sometimes, I don't know if play dumb, but you have to learn how to like that and appreciate that, knowing that it can make some people, your level of intelligence can unsettle people. Now, those aren't your people, but in business and in the world, you have to work through the fact that not everybody's going to be a level of intelligence. I think this humanizes him. He's not a robot, okay? He's not simply about himself, his own success, his own career. I do wish that he had turned down $50 million and said, hey, I could have gotten this, instead I got that. But I also think that there's a certain respect factor that Aaron Rodgers is constantly searching for as well, where Brady gets the adulation from the success that he's had, and Aaron Rodgers feels like he doesn't, and he probably feels like it's not my fault that I haven't been with a great team, and that this is the amount of respect that I deserve because of my level of talent still at this point in my career. I guess anybody gets that. But I don't know. This feels like a humanizing moment. Now, Jay Stu, do you, before hearing this, do you like Aaron Rodgers? Do you not like Aaron Rodgers? What were your feeling about Aaron Rodgers before hearing this?
No, I'm a fan of Aaron. And up until the point when he lied to the media last year, and then even after that was like his one misstep in all this. Like he's trying to convince us he never lied, but he did. That was his one misstep. But other than that, I've always liked his vibe. I've always liked it, kind of the way he's carried himself with the media, and that I don't need you all. You all need me. And I mean, think about it, Doug. What he's talking,
but I don't think that's true.
That he doesn't need the media. You're saying?
No, I don't think that's true, and I think he's realized that. Like, I think the McAfee thing is he knows he needs some form of media to get his message out, and then I think doing these interviews shows that he's okay with himself, and he's gotten stuff out there, and like, look, Peter King is always going to help a guy out. Pardon my take is going to be kind of tongue in cheek. But I actually think he knows he needs the media. I think he's just had to learn to become more comfortable. Like, look, I'm not going to share a ton of details about. I hung out with Aaron Rodgers one night. I will tell you that he was super uncomfortable, not necessarily with himself, but he told me, like, hey, when we go out, you watch. Everyone that comes up to me will put their hands on me. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I don't know. It's what people do. And it was like an inside joke between the two of us. Literally, everywhere we went, somebody would go like, Aaron! Like somebody he didn't know, somebody he did know. It didn't matter. They would all come up and touch him, like, not necessarily inappropriately, but it was still inappropriate in that, like, it wasn't like he touched them. But they always had to have their hands on him. So I think he has just had to be more comfortable with himself more than anything. And I think that is likely what's happened, and that allows him to allow some of the media in. So I do agree that had been his vibe previously. I don't need you guys, but I think that's changed some, and he's understood the McAfee thing is like is a kind of soft step into letting more people in, and the more you let people in, the more it humanizes you, and the more people give you a pass even for the things you don't like.
No doubt. And my whole thing was, you can count on one hand the number of athletes who would, one, be able to articulate what you just read, what he told Peter King,
sure,
about pain, about issues he's had with himself. It sounds like he's basically having negative self-talk, and he wanted to address that. This is like pain that he's talking about.
Sure.
How many athletes are able to articulate that and be willing to tell someone with a platform like Peter King, or on a podcast like, Pardon My Take, or wherever he's going? I think it speaks volumes, and I think it's like I walk away from those couple exchanges thinking I'm an even bigger fan of his, while it seems like most of the sentiment in the national media is to take this as an example to kind of tear him down, and probably will use it against him if the Packers don't win again.
I don't know. I'll be interested if they use it against him. I agree with you on all the other parts, right? Like how many athletes would be that comfortable. But I think it's just a very vulnerable state. And I here's the part I like best about it. It isn't a cry for sympathy, right? It isn't I did something wrong. Hey, I want you to feel bad for me because I was dealing with something. This is merely, here's where I am, and this is what I had to learn. Like I think what people don't like about the use of the term mental health. My issue would be that though I think he addressed his own mental health, I think many people in society think that there's only one level of help you need for mental health. Like you're either suicidal or you don't need mental health help. When there's just a multitude of layers to it, right? And while we need to be sensitive to somebody's mental health, we also have to realize that in professional athletics, collegiate athletics, like you got to process that, however, and you still have to perform. And so there's a difference between that and everyday Joe. There's a difference between that and suicidal thoughts. These are thoughts of self-loathing and self-doubt, self-loathing, and those sorts of things. But the part I liked is he's not asking for your sympathy. So many times when people talk about mental health and their own mental health and the things they've gone through, it's a plea for sympathy and for acceptance of how they've acted or how they're continuing to act. That's not what he's saying. And that, I think, is why it shows where he is in his own personal evolution. Right? Here's just a thought for you guys, okay? Do you know the evolution of man picture? Have you guys ever you seen that, the evolution of man? Right, you got the
yes,
Cro-Magnon,
yes.
right,
Yep.
where they're like half crawling all the way on to Homo erectus, which is where we are now, kind of standing up, right? Ramos, are you familiar with what I'm talking about? The evolution of man.
Of course,
picture?
yes.
Okay, that's how I think all of us are as guys, or at least I know I am as a guy. And I don't mean that I was a Neanderthal and that now I'm standing up straight, but I think we all go through or you should go through like an evolution as a human being. And hopefully somewhere before, you get the call to go upstairs, that you're the Homo erectus, you're the evolved man. And I think what he's saying is like, look, I'm maybe he's saying I am the evolved man, but I'm going through that process, and here's how I've gone through that process. And I would say that's a very relatable thing to me, because I'm on that same chart as well. Yes, Ramos.
Yeah, and you've made the point a couple of times, Doug, about like the Steph Curry thing, like what you said about it and how people still come back at you with that. And you're like, people evolve. People see something, make a judgment or on your part a logical explanation for something, and then see how someone progresses through their time and says, you know what, I was wrong about that. I didn't expect this to happen. It did. Makes him this type of player. Therefore, that take wasn't right, but now I see this guy's a Hall of Fame type player. People evolve. That's correct.
It's okay to be wrong. It's not okay to not admit you're wrong, but it's also, there's context to how wrong were you at the time, and how wrong are you now? But this, like, that's honestly like the biggest issue you have with politicians, and some of it is how we in the media view politicians. Well, 30 years ago you voted this way. We're like, well, that was 30 years ago. Like, times were really, really different then, And I think a little bit differently now, and here's why. Here's how I have evolved over time. I think it's a great discussion, and it's going to be interesting to see how people ingest the Peter King quote and what their response is.